Hi, my name's Keith Cooper, Northlight Images, and in this video I'm going to have a quick look at this, the BenQ SW272u monitor. It's a newish monitor from BenQ, and this is a 4K monitor. The one next to it here is a somewhat older, quite a few years older, SW272, which is the one you will have seen in the background of many of my YouTube videos of the last couple of years. Both of these at the moment have been calibrated to 4000K, a very low temperature, but it's purely because the lighting I've got around here for the videos. It means that the displays here match the video so stuff looks good on the video, but you need to calibrate your displays to a temperature. Now, in normal use, I'd calibrate monitors to typically 6500K or D65. The two are similar. They're not actually identical, but I would do that. Both of these are wide gamut monitors, slightly larger in this case. This is a newer monitor. The 2700 is a lower resolution. Now, there is, and I'll come back to this, there is a lower resolution version of this monitor, the SW272u. Now, depending on what you do, and also in my case, it depends on my eyesight, the lower resolution of this, or the version of this with the same resolution as this one, the lower resolution may fit better what you want to do, certainly if you're using a Mac. Now, normally I've been using this one connected to an old PowerBook here. I've recently got a Mac Studio, which I'm currently in the process of setting up. Now, I'm going to be coming back to the Mac Studio in some other videos, looking at software, at moving things. I spent an enjoyable hour or so setting up a couple of printers on this morning and making sure that I hadn't accidentally selected the AirPrint driver and various other things. In general, I'm going to say that if you're interested, if you're curious about setting stuff up like this, either drop me a line at Northlight Images or comment on the video. But this is specifically looking at monitors. Now, the software I used for setting this up is the Palette Master Elements. That does two things. It allows you to profile and calibrate the display. You profile a display and it gives you an ICC profile, and that is what the system uses for displaying accurate colour. The profile gives the characteristics of the monitor. So in this case, the white point is a very low 4000K. For normal use, you'd have it, as I say, 6,500, maybe 6,000 if you do a bit more print, or even 5,500, 5,000 even for print use. But I find that a bit yellow for normal editing. These ones, as they're set up here, with all the lighting I've got around here, I don't notice any difference. They look absolutely fine because my eyesight and the video here, when I've processed the images, is adapted to the LED based lighting I've got. Got a big light over there, some smaller lights up on some of the top bookshelves up there, and that's giving about 4,000. So these match that. If I wanted to set them for normal editing, so the screens I've got that I use for my main work, which are over down the other end of the office, they're set for 6500 with a brightness of around about 100. These are set for 4000 with a brightness of about 120 because it matches the right. What it does mean that if I show a print on one of these screens and then have a print that I'm holding, the match is quite close between the screen and the print. And yeah, it looks good, and it is, I'm purely doing it to convey an effect. If you're actually doing printing, you're probably better working at a higher colour temperature. But what about the software? On this one, the old Palette Master Elements software that I've used for a while, and on some of the other monitors I've tested, this one, it took, and I'll have to have a look at my notes here, it took about 15 minutes to run through the calibration setup on this, calibration and profile. So calibration, setting it to the parameters I want, profile, getting the characteristics. So this one here is set to, let's say, 4000. Takes about 14 minutes. It takes on this, and I'll show some aspects of this, but I will cut through it. This, it's like watching paint dry if I just record a video of the profiling of this, because it stops for a bit, does things, stops for a bit, and it's not going to make for a good video. But what I've got it connected up. I'm using for this particular one, this is a Calibrate, or X-Rite produced these. This is a Display Plus HL that I reviewed recently. Now this is the special version of this that allows very high luminance displays. I'm not using high luminance displays, but it's perfectly good for normal use. So that's the colorimeter that I'm using. This particular software here supports other ones, so you could use a Spider X2, you could use a Spider X. I've got one here that I use. This is an older X-Rite branded i1 display calibrator. That one works fine. USB devices. This particular one is USB-C, so it just plugs into the front here. Comes with a USB-C to USB-A adapter for when I plugged it into the laptop and was doing some stuff on here. Now, immediately the monitors, the monitor inputs on it, it has this is connected by USB-C to this. This one is connected using HDMI to this one here, or I can connect it through to a DisplayPort connector here on this. Although this old laptop does have difficulties with the 4K resolution here, it's just a bit too old to handle 4K screens happily. Works great with this one, which is one of the reasons I use it in all the videos. It's just for show, it's just to show things happening. Yeah, I'm not doing work on that. When I'm doing work on this particular one over here, it'll live down the other side of the other end of the office, and I'll be using it for that. But anyway, I fired up the software. This is Palette Master Ultimate. This is a new version of software that's been brought out, and there are more whistles and bells. There are assorted features for fine-tuning things and adjusting things, and for setting up. You can have multiple calibrations, so you can have 3 different calibrations on this monitor. So I can have a calibration for 4000. This is what I've got here. I could have a calibration for 6500 for proper editing, as it were, and I can also have a calibration set to something like REC 709. So if I'm editing the videos, I'm using DaVinci Resolve, the editing monitor I just changed that to REC 709 using the settings here, and it's controlled by this puck. Now the puck on this has got a wire connection. This is wireless, optical wireless, and I can control settings of the monitor, inputs and things like that. I can do it with that. So that works quite nicely for that. But I fired up the software here. This one takes about 5 or 6 minutes. So you've got nearly a quarter of an hour here, 5 or 6 minutes on this. Yeah, basically the technology going on that inside the monitors is getting better. The evenness of this one is good. This was one that I've shown some other examples of this. Have a look. I will have in due course, I will have a full written review of this monitor, which will go into all the details of the ports and everything like that. But I'm not just going to list all the tech specs here, but yeah, it works. There's a couple of USB sockets down the bottom here and a card reader. USB sockets work fine. I've been trying out some calibration i1 profiler on this, and that is the USB license dongle that activates my copy of i1 profiler, or i1 publish as it is, because it's the full everything version. Just plug that into that, it works. So we've got connection here. I've got these USB connections here. They go through this. Say this is connected just by a single USB connection. If you connect it up to something like this monitor here, this has a separate USB and DisplayPort adapter. Yeah, there are lots of different options you can use for setting up, but 4K monitor. What am I interested in this? I'm interested in display quality, display evenness. I don't mind, the whistles and bells that come with the software. There are some great bits for setting things, for matching other monitors and things like that. But stuff like that is nice to have, but the important bit comes to the basics here. So I've set a custom size. I'm going to run through it here just to show you what happens. But I've set it to 120 candelas per meter, white point 4000, which is what it's set to anyway, so it won't look alarmingly different when I've finished it. And I can have the kind of target. I'd have lots of patches, few patches. It doesn't make much difference on that. But the key, why is monitor hardware calibration important? Now, this, any monitor I would get nowadays, I would want hardware calibration. Why hardware calibration? Because that takes the calibration aspects away from the computer and your graphics card or however your graphics system is doing. What it means is that the calibration is in the monitor. It's much more robust. It means that the display profile has much less work to do, and certainly if you've got a larger gamut screen like these ones here, it just makes for better looking displays. Now, I'm not going to go, and I cannot go into details of all the different measurements, the accuracy of these, because to measure the accuracy of screens you need equipment that is way more advanced than something like this. Now, these are not cheap, but these are not lab standard spectrophotometers and colorimeters. If you want to do an analysis of the specific quality of a monitor, you need expensive kit. Now, these ones come with calibration certificates, that's good, but just remember that if you see anyone testing these monitors and they show you that after you've profiled this, you can have a display which will tell you how accurate it is and it'll measure. Remember that you're limited by the accuracy of the equipment that you're measuring things with. The accuracy, the display that you can show at the end of this is great for showing if something's gone amiss, something's not working right, but for actual fine details of the quality, and certainly for comparing monitors, say between this and another similar make, similar level, the figures that come out of them, well, they look pretty, there's some nice pretty graphs, but they don't necessarily mean that much. Go on features that you want. For me, it's the hardware calibration, it's the large gamut, it's the evenness. They come with these monitor hoods, but you see the older ones come with a monitor hood here. So I've got everything set up here. I'm going to just run through the profiling now. This is, I should say, get the right mouse. This is one of the minor issues of having a 4K monitor at this size. My preference, I think, for Macs, since I'm not editing 4K video, my preference would be a slightly lower resolution perhaps of this, but that's as much as anything due to my eyesight. If your eyesight is sharper at different distances, you may find that the 4K works here. Apple does not give a display resolution variation, so you can't fine-tune the display size. So the mouse pointer, I'm just setting this up, the mouse pointer needs making a bit bigger so I can actually see where it is. But anyway, let's just go here. Gives you a few warnings as to that you've left the screen on long enough and various setup options and that. We'll just go past those. And now I need to actually take the calibrator and take the cover off. Now it detects that and it tells you. So I'll just click on next here. There's a little mark in the middle of the screen there, and that's where I'm going to put the calibrator. Now, the screen here is a much lower reflectance screen than this one. It's a much smoother, there's much less reflection. I can see reflections of things very dimly, but I can see them in that screen there. Here, I can't see anything on it. It's a much better diffuse system. It is not that sensitive as some of the very high range monitors. But let's pop this down here, this little hatch at the top here. Now, I'm being careful here. There is a felt cover on here so it won't damage the screen. I'm going to put that there. And we'll hold that and the cable, and that's got the display on it here. Now, if you lean the screen back a bit, gravity will just hold it in place. I mentioned about the reflection there. If I just turn this down, this will probably burn out on the video, but I can see quite a clear reflection off that. It's not a perfect reflection, but there's much less reflection off this one here. It looks darker when you're shining a light on it. Now, ideally, you should not be shining lights on your screens, hence the idea of having the monitor hoods, which do make quite a nice difference. But this just gives a perceived better blackness. So let's just click on next and click on start, and it will now go through the process of actually making this, and it will run through the monitors. As you can see, it's getting quite bright. I'm calibrating these to 120 candelas per square meter. 120 is a typical editing setting. You might find, depending on how bright the room is, that actually you get better prints if you reduce your brightness to 100 or 90. It's customizable in the settings. You can save custom settings. So, but anyway, this is now running through here, and we get this bit here that says 0118, and we wait for the number to creep up. Now, like most of these things, it would be nice if there was a bit more activity in some form of progress bar. So I noticed when I was testing this the other day that some steps take slightly longer than others, and when you're testing something new, there's always that particularly on a brand new system like this one here. I mean, I only just got this just the other week. There's virtually nothing on it at the moment, but you just never know, has the software frozen or is it just doing something? Now, it says calibrating. Now, I know from profiling and calibrating this monitor, which is quite an old one. I think I reviewed this one about 7-8 years ago. So it's done very well. It's very even still. It's no gap. But I know from doing the ones on the bigger monitor that I use for my work that sometimes it takes a while. As I say, this one here takes about 6 minutes or so. This one here, using the old software, about 15. Now, I don't work in the kind of environment where I have to recalibrate or reprofile monitors every week. I do not work in that sort of colour critical work. If I did, then the difference between 14 minutes and 5 or 6 minutes would be quite noticeable. And this has just clicked up to 0218, and now it's gone to 03. See what I mean about the bit? There was nothing much happening, then it jumps. Now, my career before I took up photography, so we're talking, over 25 years ago, I did research on stuff. I'm looking at human-computer interaction, usability and stuff like that. So I always have a very critical view of bits of software that don't explain what's going on. Now, there are a few tweaks that I'd definitely like to see made to this software in terms of just giving feedback to users. But then, if I would complain about this, I would complain mightily about, say, X-Rite's software, Calibrate software, Data Colors software. They all have aspects which, if I'm putting my usability hat on, I could criticize aspects of interface design and user feedback. That's just me being picky on this. But it's up to 7 to 8. There we go. It's running through various steps. You can probably see I will edit this a bit to try and speed up some bits of it. It is definitely doing something, so there's no problem with that. But it's just, I can see the colours changing on the screen, but nothing much no feedback here. Yeah, it's not a big problem, just a minor gripe. And as I say, you don't buy a sports car and then get really worried about the size of the ashtrays. This is minor stuff. The reason I like these monitors is because they work well and they give a good quality display. You are spending a tiny amount of your time actually doing anything like this compared to the amount of time you'll spend using the monitor. And having a nice, good, evenly coloured monitor, much preferable to this. Normally when I calibrate monitors and things, there we go, it's changed again. Normally when I calibrate, I use it as an excuse to go and make a cup of tea or coffee or something like that. But I'm just running this through here. I've heard people ask whether you should, if you've got a choice, if you've got the kit, whether a colorimeter like this is not as good as a proper spectrophotometer that you might use for making printer profiles, for example. And in general, it's long been held that colorimeters have a better range, if they're suited to the monitor, have a better range of ability, certainly at low brightness levels, than spectrophotometers. Now that's less of an issue these days, so I would say that if you have a spectrophotometer that is supported, so it'd be like an i1 Pro 2, Pro 3 on it, or if you've got one of the older colorimeters, it really shouldn't make that much of a difference. Now, I've got two of these here. These normally live in little bags and they live in a drawer somewhere. They do not get carried about much. I take them out, very rarely use them. 18 of 18. Now, it says 18 of 18. You might think that means we're almost done, but no. Just when you thought we got to 18 of 18, we get another one of 5. But actually, this one flips through quite quickly. And it now says generating ICC profile. Now, it's actually doing a validation here of the profile. So it's going to run through this extra steps. You don't need to do the validation of it. If you like looking at the graphs and you're not in a rush or something, you can run it. It doesn't take long. See, we're up to 13 of 25, and this is now, it's stepping through different colors. The software knows what color it has sent to the screen. The software knows what color is being measured from the colorimeter here. It uses that to work out what the errors and characteristics of the monitor are. 21, 25, we're in the blues now. And this time, calibration completed. I can check the report on it. I'm just going to click on that. And it gives me the option, I'll just take the colorimeter out of the way. Put the cover back on it. We have an example photo so we can see there are before and after options. I can see that I've asked it to calibrate to 120 CD candelas per square meter. It has done. I've set it to 4000 and the actual measured value from it is 4058. You'll often get a bit of variation in these numbers. Don't be worried by it. If you need absolute precision, you will have the equipment and software for doing it. If you don't have the equipment and software, take that as a big hint that you don't need it. Likewise, in the software here, if you don't know what a function's for, you don't know why you should adjust something, take that as a hint that you probably don't need to adjust it, and the defaults are fairly good. Now, there's a book here, Real World Colour Management, that I always recommend to people who want to know more about it. Now, that was written before LCD monitors became popular. However, a lot of what's in that is perfectly valid, whether these were, I had giant great CRT monitors here, or these nice modern, flat and movable LCD displays. A CRT display this size back when I used to do my research on that, and we had some big displays, would fill this entire desktop and would keep the room warm on a cold day. This one, I can feel a bit of warmth from it. This is quite an old one. This one here, I can feel virtually nothing from it. This runs warmer than this. That's it. Power usage has dropped considerably in these. But anyway, I've got that. It allows you to set levels for what you're happy with things being used. And this is set, it has an average delta E2 of 1.14. And I can look at the tables and see things like that. So I can click on more details and I get numbers, lots and lots of numbers. Now, people love this sort of stuff. As I pointed out, you probably don't need it, but it looks pretty, doesn't it? Anyway, so there we go. I've calibrated profiled the monitor. Got the different inputs to it. The base on this one is a lot more solid than this one here. I mean, this one never fell over, but this one really feels quite robust. This one had the sockets on the side, which was good. The later versions of this had the sockets around the back, which were great if you could get around the back of your desk. Not so with this. Pleased to say that on this one, the sockets have been, and that's the USB sockets and the card reader, are now underneath here. Now, you can control the monitor by using the puck here. You can have presets, so you can preset calibrations for it, and you can adjust, you can do all the controls from this. But in general day-to-day use, I have no need ever to go near this. The only time I'd need to go near this was, say, if I had two computers connected up to this and I wanted to switch between the computers. Now, this doesn't do picture-in-picture. So there are models that do stuff. This will do a side-by-side comparison, so you can have a different gamut set for things. So you can have one of the preset gamuts, such as Adobe 98, REC 709, black and white. You can do comparisons with it. But that falls into almost into the category, unless you need it, it's the category of worrying about the precise sort of leather that's used for the seats in your sports car. Do you need it? No. It functions, I find, I never use. What's the important thing is how good the picture is. And it's a rather nice one. Anyway, I will pop this together into a video, tidy it up and get rid of some of the pauses and things like that, and hopefully it's got some interest. I will have, I'm on holiday in a bit. When I get back, I will do the written version of this. That'll have the proper specs and everything in it. The written reviews are always where I can think a bit more about exactly how I phrase things, what I write, put details in, links and stuff like that. Remember, the videos are only generally supplements to the written reviews if I do a written review for things. But this, very good replacement for that, although there is still that nagging feeling that I think for use here connected with something like this laptop, currently on a Mac, I'd take the lower resolution version. Oh, heresy. Yeah, sorry BenQ, I like this one, but it's as much as anything my eyesight. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you've got questions, as I say, please do ask. It's people's questions that often give me ideas for other videos explaining things and that. So there you go. Nice monitor. Cheers.